Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are located today. Let me say welcome to our annual IDSA update. We want to provide you an update how our more mature ecosystem is taking data spaces to the next level. So what's in for us in season 2 of data spaces? We lost the screen share. So as you see, we are still trying to fix a couple of things. My dear colleague Lars, who should open the session, is still stuck in our General Assembly. That took place directly before we start the session. I think we could wait a little bit for Lars to do the presentation. So thanks again for sharing again. As said, good morning for everyone in the western part, in the western direction from Germany, where IDSA located. Good afternoon, good evening to the eastern part. Glad that you're all with us. So it's still counting. We already have a couple of attendees. And while waiting for our moderator, I would love to walk you already a little bit through the agenda. Thanks. So, as said, still waiting for Lars Nagel and Thorsten Hülsmann, our CEOs. They will walk you a little bit through the steps taken by IDSA in 2024. So the sneak preview, without spoiling anything, we've achieved a lot in 2024. A lot of things have happened within data spaces. Data spaces are becoming more and more reality. They are becoming more and more mature and are more needed than ever. Afterwards, our tech team will provide you an update on the tech achievements, how we are bringing data space to the next level. I'm happy to hear from Silvia and Anil on the data space protocol, one of our really major assets that we have, the important things that provide interoperability within data spaces and beyond. An update on the data space protocol. Why is it needed? What does it make more interoperable, manageable, and scalable? And how we do it and what is our stand on making it an international standard. Afterwards, I will pick you up at this point to walk you a little bit to standardization activities. And I can tell you a lot of things are happening really. So we are getting some international standards on data spaces that are really required to support cross-data sharing, cross-border data sharing on an international scale. But I will also briefly walk you through what is happening in Europe, at least, because I think this is a good role model, not Europe as itself, but how we approach the management of data rights. And this is something that is happening and that we see all over the world at the same time. Of course, we will provide you an update on our core assets, our reference architecture model, the rulebook, and all the important things that we are working on. What is the status? What's coming next? And then happy to hand over to my dear colleague, Sonia, on IDS certification. Afterwards, our new activities in the tech innovation part, so how data spaces are implemented. Antoine will provide you an overview on the data space body of knowledge, the foundation for professional qualification. You are a data space expert or you want to become a data space expert, our training program is exactly right for you. You're looking for new cool implementations. You want to see what are others doing, how they develop and build data spaces. Take a look at the data space radar. My dear colleague Shani will walk you through the data space radar. Afterwards, Christoph Mertens on the telcos important role in the creation of data spaces, because we have a new IDSA community of telco providers. And also our test beds. So the ground to get used to new technologies on data sharing. And then closing with Giulia and the key publications on the data connector report and the data space business models. Then back to Lars again, the international relevance of data spaces, Europe and beyond. So what's happening everywhere in data spaces? That is for me a key learning on 2025. It's happening everywhere. And this is where we can provide a good overview. And then looking to the future, what's next in 2025? How can we grow together? How can we evolve? And what changes can you expect from the IDSA Season 2? And then close with the Q&A part. So this is a little bit our timing for today. And then I'm looking in the meanwhile if our main presenter is already on stage. And I don't see Lars here.
Lars is incognito here and seen as Christoph.
Christoph! So, Christoph, you will take over the role from Lars and walk us through the intro. What I did so far, I just walked us a little bit through the agenda. And now I think I can hand over to you. Take a deep breath and then walk us through the steps taken by IDSA in 2024. So, Lars, what happened in 2024? What did you do all day?
Yeah, a lot of things. So we have trailblazed the idea of data spaces. We have brought it to really a broad international awareness, relevance, and also first successes. Well, let's see on the next slide with who we have done that. So we are just stepping out of the General Assembly of IDSA. So we were way over time. Well, first of all, let me say a warm hello to all of you. So the wider global data space community, thank you for being here. Well, if you like what we are doing, well, we are open to new friends, new members, new partners. So join us. So currently we are 191 members from 32 countries, from all continents, and several hundred people, maybe even 1,000 people contributing to the different fields of work that we have. Next slide, please. And referring to what you said, Sebastian, what did we do in 24? So what have we achieved? So you should know that next year IDSA turns 9 in February. So we are working on data spaces since over 9 years. When we started, no one knew the term data spaces. So we've coined the term and we've set up the foundation for data spaces. So, and a lot of national data strategies and business frameworks are built on our groundwork, what we have crafted in IDSA, and that could work because we are neutral to international member-driven and consensus-based organization. And we have come up with one framework for data spaces, and you can see that as a soft infrastructure for flourishing data economy and to enable an AI. We could succeed because we have all relevant players on board. So we have the users, we have the providers of technology, so to say, the makers of data spaces. We also are in contact with the policymakers. We have the experts also from research and technologies. And more of all, we have the global reach. So I've mentioned that with the numbers before. So we know what's happening. We know the requirements from the different economic areas, from the different societies. So therefore, we can adjust our concepts and the standards that we are creating accordingly. And that is also the secret sauce of the success. And we cannot do that alone. So we are partnering with a lot of organizations all over the world. So with the partners from DSBA like IIX, Fireware, BDVA, the Data Society Alliance in Japan, other players. So with that, we can really have a global reach. And currently, we can see that actually all running data spaces are built upon IDSA concepts. Some more on the conceptual phase, but others really bringing into play connectors built according to what we propose in the reference architecture. Technology is in place. That is also the good news. And it will be brought to broad commercial offerings from now on. And we are already on a very good track, and we have first successes on global standardization because that is needed to ensure industry-grade quality and wide adoption. So that happened in 24. And on the next slide, and you see the picture here at the right part of the slide. So we do not change in what we are doing, but on the next slide, we change a little bit the storytelling, and we adjust the offerings, the activities that we conduct, also that we offer to our members, and we can paint the full picture. So starting from IDSA as that neutral international organization that it is, depicting, embracing that our members do the job at the end. So it is you who make data spaces a global success, something that you can experience, technology that is delivered, services that are offered, and benefits that can be witnessed. And bringing together the users with their requirements and the makers with their reliable offerings, that is the cycle that we do in IDSA. We define altogether the standards so that this can all happen from the rulebook up to certification and knowledge transfer, always tied to technology and open source. And then the core goal is to create impact. I will, and the colleagues will explain much more on all the different aspects. And this is the storyline with a certain focus in 25 that we are going for. And next slide, I would like to introduce a little bit what will come next. So we are working on different assets. So we are a global organization with a new topic. So we are still in a transformational shift in data economy. So to bring data spaces, data economy, and AI to life. So we need to do several things from ranging from theory to practice. And that is what we want to share with you, present to you in the next minutes. All these different elements, and please click. You can see that this perfectly lines up to complex things, so rocket science, so really a thorough foundation that you can build your business processes, your future success, maybe even your ecosystem, your society upon. So that is what we need with global standards, right? So like the plug or the socket in the wall, so that where you can get power from, you need to rely on it that it works. But also we need to make it as easy and digestible as a piece of cake. And click, please. We see that we need the solution so that you can experience it. And next slide, we also need to explain how that all sticks together. Well, that is our goal, our motivation. But it's our team, my dear colleagues that are working on it, and I would like to give the floor to those and move on in the agenda. Next slide, please. So let's start with what in 2024 has been in the center of our activities, the data space protocol. And if I'm not mistaken, I will hand over to my dear colleague Anil Turkmayali. Anil, what has happened? What are you going to do?
Okay, happy to tell. So good morning, afternoon, and evening, everyone. And thank you for being with us today. So I will be providing the updates, the latest updates about the data space protocol. So alongside with its positioning towards the data sharing ecosystem, and also my dear colleague Silvia Castellvi will be taking over to give more details about how it will become an ISO standard. So in the next slide, actually, what we see is like in the world of the data spaces, we know that there is still some fragmented structure. It doesn't only apply to the inter-data space interoperability, so the interoperability between data space instances, but also intra-data space interoperability, so the interoperability that we are talking within a data space. So this results in many issues, including the unclear terms between parties and conflicting formats and incompatible standards and so on. But on the other hand, once we are talking about interoperability, so it's all about talking, right? And we need to know what to talk, what to communicate, how to communicate that, and when to communicate those. So that's why, as a natural outcome of these needs, we have this data space protocol, which came out of our ecosystem, which is trying to tackle these problems to some extent. And we are all well aware that data spaces require a lot of values like data sovereignty, interoperability, scalability, and trustworthiness. And data space protocol is contributing to those to some extent. It's not the only solution that is tackling everything, but it's the first of its kind and also the best basis that you can use to build upon. So it's pretty much similar to some of the former protocols like the HTTP or Swift, GSM or Bluetooth that you can see the logos on the right bottom side. But you can very easily see that it's always the same formula. Like there are parties who want to exchange some stuff, and we need a unified way to do it. A way that can dictate on how data should be shared between the consumers and providers. So that's where data space protocol comes in. In the next slide, so as I mentioned, we have, so this is not a work that we are drafting here in our head office. So this has come out of a natural need from the ecosystem. And there are many parties involved in the code definition of it and also adoption of it. So it's quite important for us on having more and more adopters of it so that we can really rely on the feedback that we are getting from this implementation. So it's super important for us. And also in the next slide, as you can see, there are some research and development projects who are adopting it. So that's quite important that we are keeping this feedback loop so that we can improve the standard and take it into a better position. So it's basically providing a basis for technical and semantic interoperability. And so for the technical interoperability part, by adhering to the data space protocol, you are using the standardized connectors. I mean, all parties, whether you are a data provider or a data consumer. So it means it results in compatible communication. And on the other hand, it's making the data providers to use ODRL to create and attach usage policies to their data sets. So it's ensuring the compliance with the data provider's terms. So all the future consumption of these data sets become compatible with the data provider. And then both parties agree on executing how the data will be exchanged, when it will be exchanged, and how it will be exchanged by following which order, which is in creating an agreement on executing the data plane. And in the next slide, it's also providing a basis for the semantic interoperability. So by using DSP, you are basically adhering to some of the existing shared models like JSON-LD or RDF format. And so data providers and consumers are interpreting the same structure and using that. For metadata standards also, so you are directly embedding the contextual metadata by using DCAT. So both parties are aligning on those matters. And there are also support for domain-specific extensions. So it's important to mention that DSP is not alone solving the entire semantic interoperability issue, but it's a perfect basis for that. So you can use DSP and then enrich it with domain-specific extensions for the semantic interoperability. And then we come to the standards. We are always emphasizing the importance of standards. So in brief, data sovereignty is maintained by allowing data providers to set and enforce their own usage policies. And it's providing a basis for semantic and technical interoperability. And due to its flexible and modular architecture, which separates data plane and control plane, you ensure the growth and scalability for scaling your data operations in the future. And then we come to the importance of standardization. And so it's currently in the next slide, as you can see, there is a process for that. And it's currently being also, there's a specification project running on under Eclipse Foundation. And then we are waiting for the submission to ISO. And as it becomes an ISO standard, we will have a stable version for several years, which is really great for the industry. So it's we are waiting for the publicly available specification to be submitted for ISO IEC JTC1, the information technology one. Then happily I will hand over to my dear colleague Silvia Castellvi, who will provide more information about the standardization.
Thank you, Anil. Very brief, if we talk about data and standardization regulation, we need to talk about Data Act. And as you know, Data Act is how Europe is defining what we need, what we believe that it makes sense for Europe. And we recognize on the European Data Act that data spaces play a significant role in the way of exchanging data in the future. And it's for this reason that when we are implementing the data space protocol in the future and know what we are defining the specification, we are achieving the digital single market. What means achieving digital single market? That all data spaces are able to communicate and interoperate. So when we are defining the technical specifications in the working group and now on Eclipse, we are considering the Data Act, and more specifically Article 33. And here we have made an extract of the Data Act, Article 33, regarding technical interoperability, also machine-readable formats. These are requirements and how the data space protocol fulfill these requirements. And also a request for harmonized standards. So the data space protocols aligns with global standards, W3C, ISO, but also GAIA-X and CNLEC, in order to create unharmonized specifications for data sharing. If we go to the next, but talking about standardization, here we can see, as Anil has explained, Eclipse has used the past submission to ISO to become an ISO standard. So then next year we will have finally the data space protocol to become an ISO standard. And Eclipse is a working group, is aligning with ISO, different committees talking about data space, also Future Sense and ELEC. But from IDSA, we are already working and contributing with technical committees, just to highlight the most important that we are involved and what we are doing in these technical committees, as also some members that I participate. And I take this opportunity to invite you to participate, identify who in your organization is participating on Sense and ELEC, ISO, and be more active on these committees to standardize data space. So what we do is bring what you are doing, what we all of us are doing on working group, rulebook committee, architecture working group committee, all the knowledge that we generate and we put on these important reliable papers from IDSA, also data space protocol, we bring to Sense and ELEC trusted data transaction, but also the new created GTC 25 on data management, data spaces, cloud and edge, very important, very relevant for next year, and the all known and mentioned ISO SD38, where data space concepts and characteristics are defined. But I give the turn to Sebastian to explain in more detail the importance of standardization. Thank you.
Thanks, Silvia. Thanks, Anil. And thanks for the great segue to my slide. So if we could move forward to the next slide. So I will take you to a closer look to standardization activities and how this all fits together. So Silvia explained already a lot on that one. So, but I would like to explain a little bit. So what is the context of all the standardization efforts? Man, it is kind of a jungle out there with all the standardization bodies and standards happening out there. So with our work on the data space protocol and the deliverables beyond the data space protocol from IDSA, we are putting the things into the context of the standardization activities. So what we do, of course, we align with the European standardization bodies. Briefly mentioned that we have a new joint technical committee 25. working on data management, data spaces, cloud, and edge. We used to have a focus group, the focus group DDCE, how it is listed here in the slides, the data spaces, cloud, and edge, which is disbanded and continued as a working group in JTC 25. JTC 25 we'll have 3 more working groups, one taking care about data spaces, one taking care about data governance, and one about the cloud and edge topics. And there is also the CWA, so this is a workshop agreement on trusted data transaction. We saw already a preliminary result, the part 1, and there you can see nicely how trusted data transaction can happen in data spaces. The part 2 will be released during the next year that will discuss more about trustworthiness requirements. So this is what is happening in Europe, and it's quite relevant because we have some European acts and regulations in place, like the Data Act, which is highly relevant, especially here Article 33 and 35. But we also have the Data Governance Act. We have the AI Act, and we discussed a lot during this year how data spaces can fuel AI and how policies, regulations, and all those things really fit into the field of data spaces. So this is a European perspective. So things that are happening in Europe, we see similar things happening in other nations, in other regions of the world. But it's also nicely connected to international work, like we see at the OECD level when we discuss about data sharing policies and how cross-border data sharing can take place. Or the data free flow with trust approach, which is the policy-based approach to data spaces, if I should put it into 3 words. So on this fits nicely to our international standardization activities. I mean, data sharing and our industrial value chains are typically cross-border, across nations. So of course we need international standards for that. And therefore we have our standard on the way, 2151, data space concepts and characteristics, which is highly relevant. I will come back to that just in a bit. And we have a technical specification also coming from ISO IEC JTC 1 SC38. It's TS 10866, and please folks take a look at that one. That one is finalized and published. It's on digital sovereignty and organizational autonomy. It provides you a framework how you as an organization can approach the subject, can approach this matter, and make it as a step-by-step approach and not a one-size-for-all approach. Really a good read for all of you. Of course, and it was presented before by my colleagues, so we need to support semantic interoperability. Things are happening at W3C, the World Wide Web Consortium, where we are talking about DCAT. But we also need to discuss on the application profiles for DCAT. So DCAT is a good foundation, but how can we build good application profiles for that fulfill the needs that we have? And also ODRL as a policy model. And likewise, we need to think how we can extend this in the future with application profiles. Of course, we need to provide usable, meaning implementable standards. And this is where we have our strong arm with the Eclipse Foundation and the Eclipse Data Space Working Group. That is chaired, by the way, by IDSA. So this is our push really to get the community of implementers together to provide usable, implementable standards like the Data Space Protocol, like the decentralized claims protocol, the conformity assessment profile, the digital rights profile, and having implementable components like the Eclipse data space components. And again, this fits nicely into a set of broader international standardization activities that are taking place, for example, at the United Nations, in ITU, and so on and so forth. A lot of things are happening that we are observing and moving forward into a good direction for all of us in international standardization, in European standardization and beyond. But what is really in the core of our work? Let me explain this maybe on my next slide. Because what you're interested in typically is, how can I participate in the data space? How can I comply with the data space? How can I join the data space? That's on the left side, the participant perspective. What you want to know is first, okay, what is a data space? And this is defined in 2151, the data space concepts and characteristics. What is a data space? Am I a data space or not? Am I compliant with a standard? And as I used to say, it's not a bad thing in itself to be not a data space. Well, you should know at least if you're a data space or not. As a participant, you would like to be interoperable. You would like to share data in a data space. And this is where the data space protocol is of help to provide interoperable communication between the participants of a data space. And then we have, in this case, things like trusted data transaction, which could be national standards and regulations like we have in Europe, and then named trusted data transaction. But this concept goes beyond. So how can I create a trust context where such trusted data transaction can happen, can take place? And so if we can go to the next slide, and this is my final one on standardization at least. So this is what we deliver. The 2151 standard is basically based on the IDSA rulebook. It is completely in line with our work, and we are assuring that it will stay in line with our work. So it's a moment in the so-called CD stage 3020. It will be finalized definitely in 2026. The sooner the better, so it's still open for contribution, for participation here, but I can assure you it's in line with our work. Data space protocol already describes sufficiently that we are on our way to a path submission. And the trusted data transaction, well, this is something that could be standardized in the European Trusted Data Framework based on IDSA standards and a lot of topics beyond, like we discussed before. We have DCAT, we have ODRL. We need somehow trusted ontologies. We need data governance standards in the future for Europe on the one hand side, but these standards are applicable and usable because they are based on international standards also all across the globe. So this is the bigger picture of standardization. You see a lot of things have happened in 2024 where we set up a couple of things, a lot of things. 2025 and 2026 latest is time to deliver all of those standards that all of us need to build a reliable and sustainable foundation for data spaces. So, and I saw one question in the Q&A part, has the standard been published? I hope it was answered. So TS 10866, a good read. This is something that you can, that is published, that you can read. You can get it from the ISO IEC. 2151 will be published in 2026 and the data space protocol in 2025 as an international standard. Good. So international standardization. Whoa, big topic. Kept us busy in 2024, will keep us busy in the future, but our working groups have also been pretty active. So we have a couple of news for you. So if we can go to the next slide, I brought you 3 items today that we have been working on, and I tried to limit myself to 3 relevant things. First, our paper on trusted data spaces as an internal paper that guides our working groups. We've been working a lot on the topic of observability in data space. And we have our first working draft of RAM 5 close to be published. So because we have a commenting phase until tomorrow. So let's dig a little bit into the details very shortly. So on the next slide, trust in data spaces. This is a highly relevant topic. And as you see on the lower left side, we mention here a couple of things. And I'm pretty sure that we did not yet cover everything. But the discussion that we used to have in IDSA is, so we have so many organizations, so many concepts, we have specifications available, and we have implementations. How do those things fit together? Does IDSA has to do something or not? Where are the things happening? This paper shall guide our working groups, the members of our working groups. So we structured our world a little bit, what is happening where, how do the things fit together, and what is our take on trusted data spaces? What do we do in IDSA when it comes to trust? So, and I can tell you, well, it's not too much. We need trust and we have a clear perspective on that, but there is plenty of room for all the other approaches. So this is a set internal IDSA publications for all IDSA members. That's a good read and you should read it. But part of it will be taken for our new reference architecture model to provide guidance for our trust perspective. The second paper on the next slide on observability in data spaces. That is really an interesting topic. It was not on our short list of topics from the IDSA staff, but our members insisted to work on this. So how can transaction be observed while data sharing happens between the participants? What is mandatory? What is optional? We need observability for auditing, for example, for billing, for legal obligations, well, or for other reasons, because I just want to have it observed when I share my data with you. So again, this is an internal paper that is still under discussion. with great content. We are looking forward to publish it in Q1 2025 to the broad public, to provide also some more details to the broader public on this topic. So the sneak preview before the holiday break, our clearinghouse will be deprecated and it will be replaced with something new. So that's your cliffhanger, folks. Stay tuned. Beginning of next year, you will have the full paper. IDSA members, join us in the work on this topic. Read through this one. Always open for comments and for discussion on this topic. And finally, this is what I want to close with, because maybe that's a tiny Christmas present also for the CTO of IDSA. We have our working draft 1 of RAM 5. Our RAM 5 follows a new modular approach, so it's not this long linear document with roughly 200 pages, but it's chopped into smaller pieces that are more easier to understand and where someone can follow more easy understand the pieces of content that are required for your current situation. Our structure will stay the same. So the structure will stay the same with our 5 layers, our 3 perspectives. We renamed the security perspective to trust perspective, and what we have at the moment are the foundational aspects. So what are really the key pillars for data spaces when it comes to a reference architecture model, well aligned with the IDSA rulebook and therefore well aligned with IS 2151 once it is published. And we have a first version of our trust perspective, explaining how trust can be established in data spaces. And we will continuously update this. Our working group is working relentlessly on this one to provide updates. And this holds true for all of you, all our IDSA members. Please join us in this work here. Please support us. Bring your expertise and your knowledge to move all our great deliverables. And sorry, today only the working group architecture wasn't the focus of my pitch. Also our working group rulebook, our working group certification. We need you, our members, to move our stuff forward, because I hope it was made clear so far already, and my colleagues will it even make more clear. Data spaces are required and we have to deliver a good foundation for that one. And I think with that, I can hand over. To my dear colleague, Sonia.
Thank you, Sebastian. Hi, everyone. I'm very happy to present the latest news on certification. So please, next slide. Yes. So we keep adding new certified connectors to the list. So as you can see, already the test systems connector, engineering true connector, TNO security gateway, and VTT connector, and now recently the Exchange Data Space connector by Huawei has been certified by assurance level 2, so conserve review, the very thorough process conducted by an evaluation facility, which is SQS in Spain. Additionally, we have the connector from Gate Institute, who conducted certification by the checklist approach, assurance level 1. So the list keeps growing. This is very important because these companies have taken a step forward in bringing trust to data spaces, which, as you know, is required in order to adopt data spaces and also for their proliferation. So now we have here certified connectors, very mature connectors that comply with all of our specifications, that have been thoroughly tested and can be trusted. So this is a very important milestone that we hit. And additionally to the certified connectors, we can also very proudly announce in the next slide. Yeah, the first operational environment certifications. So 2 companies, Renes Foundation and the Mobility Lab in Vitoria-Gasteiz in the Basque Country in Spain. Also conducted the operational environment certification. So these companies are now ready to be participants of a data space. So this is also very good news. So now we have certifications both for the components and also for the operational environments. So yeah, so this is our way to bring trust to data spaces, to have trusted participants and trusted connectors in data spaces. So next slide, please. And I'd like to talk a little bit about IDSA Certification 2.0. So what you've seen until now is based on the first version of IDSA certification that was launched a couple of years ago. Now we're working on Certification 2.0. And why are we doing this? It's because, of course, as we all know, technology is advancing. It was presented now the version 5 of the RAM. We also have the rule book. Now, as my colleagues presented, the data space protocol, and certification has to keep up with all these new developments. So we need to update the certification to define criteria for all of these assets and to test these criteria. And we had several very productive discussions, and we ran several workshops during this year in the working group certification meetings to discuss what should the new certification be like. And we came up to some conclusions, like we defined which criteria needed to be updated from the previous certification, which modules the IDSA certification should have, which should be mandatory and optional, what could be automated. So we agreed that we would use the TCK to test the compliance to the data space protocol. And we had several options that we put together in a paper. So this vision paper was shared with all the participants of the working group certification, because we have several options and we need to choose one of them. So we need to discuss and vote for one of them, and then continue with the support of the working group members, drafting this and shaping this IDSA certification 2.0. This is key. This is very important for new data spaces, that we have a certification scheme that's able to test and certify the latest developments. So yeah, I'm asking here also for the support of the working group certification members, because we have to do this together. So as I said, the paper was already shared, and we will be conducting a workshop also to vote on the most suitable option for us at the end of January. And with this, yeah, I've finished my presentation and I can hand over to
me. Thank you very much.
Lars.
Great. So thank you for all these insights in tech innovation, in how IDSA crafts global standards and also makes them testable, so to say. And now let's also see how we can bring that to broad use. So go for adoption and foster data space implementation. And this all starts with knowledge. You need to know how that works. And that is why we have the data space body of knowledge and the professional qualification program. Antoine, what is that and why is that so cool? And
Indeed.
Who should have a look at it?
Let's learn together. We will be stronger. So good morning and good afternoon on my side. What I'd like to present you today is something we have been working on over the last year on this new professional qualification program. As you could see in the next slide, this is of course about data space, as you might have guessed. Nothing surprising here. It uses IDSA framework as its main theme. So this is really the backbone of our program. And as the ground layer of this program, we have developed what we call the data space body of knowledge that you can see on the right-hand side of your screen in yellow. This document, so the data space body of knowledge, is basically a syllabus describing each qualification. And this is the result of the joint work of the working group training. So what it means is that experts sit together and they determine like learning items that matters in order to be recognized as, let's say, a data space business consultant. As you can see, this is among the qualification that we have. And these are the very items that are tested in an exam afterwards, leading to earn an IDSA professional certificate. So already, if you are interested, don't hesitate to join us. We are looking for more people passionate about data space and education. So yeah, just inform me or fill our contact form in the related section on our website. I'm more than happy to see more people joining us defining those qualifications. So currently, this document, so the data space body of knowledge, is available in version 1. With the first qualification in it, which is called Data Space Fundamentals. And Data Space Fundamentals is providing an overview about the essential concept of data space with the objective by the end of the course to be able to identify first application of data space for your organization. So this is really the entry point for newcomers. And based on this first qualification, so on this first syllabus, so now I'm moving to what is available now. We had the syllabus. Let's talk about the course that are available. So first training provider offer training session available in our catalog, so the catalog that you can find on our website. Our first training provider in Spain has opened already in-person class in different locations in the country, but also now virtual classes for people anywhere else in the world that can register and earn a certificate demonstrating their proficiency into data space. So whether you look for you or your team an easy way to get up to speed with the core concept of data space, or if you'd like to reinforce your expertise with a professional certificate, don't hesitate to register now. There is surely a session that match your needs and time expectation. So finally, I just want to add that more is to come. So first, we are continuously updating our material. So we know that our field is moving pretty fast, but you can be assured that you'll get access to the latest material with our program. So actually, this is a task also of the working group to continue to update this material. But also more qualifications are coming. We are currently working on the data space business consultant syllabus, and the data space technical consultant will come right after. Both qualifications are planned for 2025. So multiple occasion to upskill with IDSA qualification next year, and that will be all on my side, Lars. So back to you.
That sounds great, Antoine, and the audience, please have a look at that and make yourself familiar with data spaces. So, and if you want to know what is happening out there, where are the data spaces out in the wild, where you can find inspiration, maybe partners, maybe an ecosystem that you would like to join, then please have a look at the data space radar. That great single point of information will be presented by my dear colleague, Shani. Well, what has happened in the last weeks on the great radar, Shani?
Thank you, Lars. So we can just jump right into the next slide, and maybe a second before going on with what is new with the radar, just some information for those of you who are less familiar with the radar. So the data spaces radar, really in many senses, a one-of-its-kind tool where we try to collect all data spaces, all use cases that there are out there in the world, in the wild. So you can get sort of a snapshot of global data spaces initiative in one place. And as you can see in this sort of nice visual, all the data spaces are visualized as dots, where the most mature initiatives are visualized closest to the center. So those of you who have been sort of following the radar throughout the years, I assume could see sort of this proliferation of those dots, more and more dots, and getting closer and closer to the center as we see the ecosystem mature. But the radar is more than just a pretty graph, because behind this, we also hold a lot of hopefully valuable information to you. So you can discover data spaces by sector, location, development stage, and plenty of other search and filters that are available. And you can also deep dive into technical foundations, components, technical building blocks, connectors, and so on. And in the last few weeks, and we can move to the next slide, we have been working on a fresh new look to the radar with really usability at the core of this update. And the idea was less complexity, more focus, and hopefully a better user experience. So now you can see pretty much everything that we have in this big database in two dedicated screens. So the first one is a radar view, which is sort of the classic view that the radar always held, where we can go into one single entry and see all the information, but it is hopefully much more a much bigger deep dive, holds a lot more information, and hopefully in a very easy to follow sort of manner. And you also have the chart view, which is where you can see plenty of nice graphs and basically the big picture of how the ecosystem looks like at the moment. And we can move on to the next slide. And you can see that we already have over 180 entries in the radar. It actually was updated today, so 185, hot off the press. Over 100 of them are data spaces, and the rest are use cases from different sectors. And if you will go into the radar, you'll see different maturity levels and so on. And we can move on to the next slide. And this is where I will sort of wrap up and say, we have a lot of information in the radar, a lot of valuable information, and there is really no such other touch point in the ecosystem. But we know that there is a lot more that is happening out there, you know, in Europe, in Americas, China, Japan, and so on. And the radar is really a community tool. All the entries are based on user-submitted information. We just provide the platform for you and the ability to search for it and tailor it for your needs. So please, I am using this this platform that I have right here to extend the information, the invitation to you. Please help us keep the radar as strong and relevant as it is, and it will bring you visibility. It's a chance to put your dot on the map and showcase your impact. So please help us and bring your use cases and data spaces into the radar. Thank you. With that, I will finish my part of the presentation.
Shani, that sounds great. And well, I think that is great read also in the evening. So have a look at what is there, and let's see that we have all data space endeavors from all over the world on the radar, as it has been explained. We know about data spaces, we know where to find them, and we can get inspired. Now we need to shed a light on how to run and operate those data spaces. How does that work? Who's really making their hands dirty? So the telco providers, the telecommunication carriers, they are familiar with the business model, providing services and connectivity. So therefore, they play a special role in data spaces, and also others who know about technology, and we all need to get familiar with it. We can experience, we need to make our hands dirty. So test beds and labs are needed and super important. My dear colleague Christoph will let us know more about these perspectives of data spaces.
Thank you, Lars.
Yours.
Yeah, so good advantage to be here in the very same spot like you. And let me already show you the first slide in this regard. So I wanted to make this a bit of a reflection of where we stand. I really believe that the findings that were presented and the news that already were shared from the technical and non-technical aspects are very promising. And still, if you look at the state of play, we can still say we have the vast amount of users still in front of us. We are still in a relatively early phase, observing a lot of great examples, but still the potential is much, much higher. Next slide, please. And this also is reflected for me in the core questions that we as IDSA were dealing with in the past, which used to be how to build data spaces. We have many, many documents that deal with the technical aspects of data spaces, showing the architecture and explaining also which steps you have to do in order to build your very own instantiation of a data space or your connector, or how to use the protocol. Next slide, please. I really believe that we are in a shifting phase currently, where the question is more and more how to use the data space. That will help us to also get up the hill and be in much closer contact and more realistic contact with the companies out there. Next slide, please. How to really realize this shift? I think it also requires a certain shift in what is offered out there. And from our perspective, the telecommunication provider community is one of the puzzle pieces that helps us to also perform this shift from a technical communication where you have to be educated about many aspects towards something that is offered at the market and is as simple as buying a mobile communication card out there in the store and starting to do phone calls with other people out there. The telco provider community consists of currently T-Systems, NTT, and KPN. So we already have a quite global footprint here. But with our new member, China Telecom, we even broaden this perspective in order to figure out from the telco provider view how to come to more customer-friendly offerings, you could say. Next slide, please. There are different objectives that come with this and also core questions that the community is dealing with. As you know, telco provider community or the telco providers already own a lot of assets when it comes to interacting with each other on a private and also corporate level. So they are the right companies also to go the next step and integrate data sovereignty into this narrative. And I really think the nationality is a very important aspect, just as what are concrete requirements also. So it helps us not only to go closer to the customer, but also give closer feedback and better feedback to the technical side of IDSA towards data space protocol, interoperability, what are systems and rules that where technical and customer side come together, and also set up demonstrations for the technical evidence that they are creating. Next slide, please. And next slide, please, because this is also then the evidence of things. So once you answered your questions, how to use the protocol, what are requirements from the customer side, how can we bring this out there? The offering that has to be out there, of course, on one hand side has to be commercial. So companies usually would like to buy the required things in order to join a data space and start sharing their data in a sovereign way. But there are also scenarios where the core of what we as community develop has to be tangible in a step before maybe. So already a long time ago, we had the first test beds out there. But what you can say, even though these test beds share one base, so at least the values of sovereignty and trust in data ecosystems, but also the technical side, connectors that are interoperable, data space protocol. Next click, please. You see different purposes that these test beds fulfill out there. So it can be 100% R&D related what you're coming up with in order to have a proof of concept for your very own project from a specific domain. But it's also about harmonizing existing implementations of connectors, for instance, that you can experience first-hand side in test beds. The IDSA testbed, as another example, serves for certification purposes. We can do compliance tests. We even can push this closer to commercialization, starting with a test bed. We are creating with our community open source solutions that are really applied to the test beds, and by the fact that they are open source can be experienced also by others that want to set up their own infrastructure. We have reference implementations, testing real-life scenarios, and also setting up industrial use cases. Next click, please. And this is something where an entire community of very different and diverse companies and associations, projects are out there in order to push this vision forward, to make data spaces not only a theoretical asset, but to bring it close to the market and make it experienceable for the rest of the world. I only can recommend to reach out to any of these. We are glad to help you to reach out. If you want to set up your own test bed, or if you want to experience the test beds that you can experience already, we are glad to make connections here for you so that data spaces are moving surely from theory to practice. So I think, Lars, I can also moderate directly to the next part, which will be my colleague Giulia. I skipped some detailed slides that you can find as a follow-up about concrete testbed instantiations in order to save some time, and hand over to Giulia, who will introduce some of the most recent publications that our community did. So Giulia, I hope you're already with me.
Yes, I am.
You are, very good. Let us know about some of the newest publications that we can find on our webpage.
Absolutely. Very glad to do that. I've reported here 2 important papers of ours, but please be aware we've published also other position papers, so make sure to check out the archive with all the publications from IDSA. You will find there, for example, a position paper on AI and data spaces on the AI Act, as well as a publication from the industrial community of IDSA, interoperability in data spaces, and much more. What I would like to focus on today are these 2 publications. First of all, the Data Connector report. Together with the radar, this is an important publication that shows adoption of data spaces and revolves around the central component of connectors. I'm sure most of you are already familiar with it, but for those of you that are not, why a Data Connector report? What's the purpose? This is a recurring publication from IDSA that started back in November 2022. With the purpose to explain why we need connectors in data spaces and how we can implement interoperability between connectors. A central aspect of the Data Connector report is to also show how much is happening on the technology side and how many connectors have already been implemented. Specifically, in the latest version of it in September, we've documented 38 connectors. And if you check that out, you will see not just the technical features of them, but also external links for further deep dive, as well as a list of the projects where the connectors have been adopted. So definitely a must read. Make sure to check that out. And if you go to the specific page of the website, you will see, you will manage to always find the latest version of it. Very good. We can now move to the most recent publication of ours. This is a special one. It revolves around business model in data spaces. And I'm very happy that I'm able to present it here today. Why? We are talking about technology a lot at IDSA. The reason is obvious, but we're all here in this call today because we know that data spaces are and will generate incredible value and innovation opportunities. From the IDSA perspective, of course, this is clear. The more participants in data spaces, the biggest the value. And at the moment, this value is, we can understand it's there and the big potential, but it's difficult to really grasp and monitor. With the big community that we have, having all the big players in the in our working groups and in discussions with us, we made this effort to bring together some knowledge revolving around how we can really unlock this value. And that's, of course, related to business models. In this specific publication, we've documented some choices from 3 of the most advanced operating data spaces, namely Catena-X, the mobility data space, and the smart connected supplier network in the Netherlands. So if you haven't checked it out yet, make sure to do so. And if you have more ideas on how we can bring this forward or new ideas for publications that we can do together, make sure to reach out to us. We will be very happy to investigate it with you. Thanks a lot.
Great. Giulia, thank you very much. That is great work and really important insights. And it's really good to see that you are super active also in the chat. All of you, the colleagues are answering, and that is exactly what we need to have, a vivid a discussion, insightful and meaningful. So that is what you can expect in IDSA ecosystem the whole time. So really everyone is engaged and you always get like important insights and answers. Great. So we've now made the whole way from the tech innovations and the thorough foundations for data spaces presented from the tech team. Then what we are doing in IDSA is giving guidance and transparency and visibility of what is happening. Thank you for all these great efforts. And I would like to shortly present why this is relevant on a global scale. Well, I think you already got it, right? But let me share with you here the vision that IDSA has, and then also the activities that we conduct. So what is the secret sauce that everyone wants to have when we talk about the data economy? So we talk about massive data sharing between organizations, so hundreds, thousands of organizations sharing data so that they can benefit from better algorithms, better quality, more insights, sharing burdens. So there are a lot of business rationales for building data spaces. They will really flourish and bring effect when this happens on international scale. And that is how our economy and our societies work. So we are living in a globalized world, and all value creation happens in networks of global scale. Okay, so therefore we probably have data space in one domain and economic area, and a second data space maybe in another domain in another economic area. So let's say Europe and Japan, or China and Brazil. And then we have to take into consideration a lot of aspects when we really go for data sharing. And here I want to make the link from what has been presented before from Anil and Sebastian. So the data space protocol. Well, this is a very, very easy mechanism, very, very handy maybe, but it is super, super important and powerful because it enables that data sharing between different domains and different countries, and it respects the whole stack of technology. So the data space protocol, at the end, it does something very important. It ensures that you can share data or not. That is what we name data sovereignty or self-determined data sharing. So at the end, it's like, do I trust the other party, yes or no? And then I share data, yes or no. But that follows a multi-policy approach. So that is what IDSA brings, and the data space protocol is in the center because we respect the usage constraints from the users on that level, but we also check the underlying cloud edge continuum infrastructure. So where is that component instantiated? And also we ask, like, okay, can we trust that organization So therefore, the international mutual recognition of trust anchors is super relevant, and also more detailed trust services that you can express in decentralized claims. So can I trust that organization? Can I trust that person in that organization? Can I trust that component? So all of that. And then I can do the data sharing, the data space core services like data sharing, data contract negotiation. So the great thing is the data space protocol takes care of all of that. And with that, we can enable true international data sharing, international interoperability. So that is our vision. That is what we need to make happen. And not less than that is the baseline for our global standardization activity. So just to bring that back into our memory. And next slide, please. So therefore, for IDSA, it is important to talk, so to say, with everyone all over the world, with all economic areas, with all those organizations who have a say on that stack. So we need to talk with the cloud and infrastructure providers. We need to talk with policymakers because they decide about like these trust anchors, for example. They also finance data space endeavors. We also need to talk with these organizations all over the place who will deliver the services at the end. And the telco provider is not limited to providing his services in one country, right? So they want to have global business. So therefore, we have to have a view on the whole world. And well, we are the International Data Spaces Association. And we are the place to have these kinds of discussions because we are not tied to any national government, to a certain domain. We are like the global go-to place when it comes to data spaces, and that is expressed in our name. And therefore, all of you who consider to do something on a global scale, if you are a company, a research organization, a government representative, IDSA can facilitate and moderate all of these activities. And let me give some insights what we are doing on that global scale. So we can call it different names. So I call it like harmonization of frameworks and data strategies on global level. So we are an international organization. So we have, so to say, no home. We have been like initiated in Europe, but now we have equal members also in Japan, in China, in Brazil, elsewhere, in Europe, in the US, and therefore we need to understand what are the requirements of these ecosystems, how does it work, what are their strategies on data spaces, and we very well know what is happening there. We are in intense collaborations, well, with the European Commission for sure. We are central player in the Data Spaces Support Center, but we are also since a long time in contact with the Japanese ecosystem, with our friends from the Data Society Alliance and a lot of partners in Japan, in continuous collaboration with the digital agency, the METI, and all these players in Japan. And we know, so you see here the picture how the Japanese data space ecosystem looks like. You see the blueprint from the Data Spaces Support Center in Europe on the left-hand side. And recently there was the announcement from the Chinese government to build 100 data spaces in the next years. So we are in contact with China since several years. We have strong partners there with the China Future Internet Engineering Center, with our IDS Research Lab, and also CAICT and a lot of other players. And you can see here the Chinese data strategy. They have the trusted data metrics. So and also we have national data strategies. So for example, in Brazil, very advanced and so to say the new kid on the block. If you want to make happen what I just mentioned in the beginning, we need to see like how do these frameworks work together. And the IDSA approach, technology agnostic, pan-national, true international, we need to find the smallest common denominator so that these frameworks can really interact according to what I just said. And we know all of that. We know we are in continuous contact with all the relevant players to make these ecosystems or frameworks happen. So therefore, it's great to be with IDSA. And you see our members are spread all over the world. We are driving these global standards with the different standardization bodies. And we have players who can also then realize it in the respective economic area. So therefore, it's all set and looking forward to really make that international notion in our name a reality. Next slide, please. And strong partners on that end are our hubs, and knowledgeable partners are the competence centers and labs. We have already 1.5 dozens of them. And thanks to the great work, because we cannot be everywhere. At the end, we are a small non-profit organization. We rely on big ecosystems in the region, in the countries, and that is what our hubs take care of. So, in which bright future is that leading us? Next slide, please. So we've explained what we are doing. So also for 25, how does that all fit together? What will be the tonality? What will be our posture of IDSA to really be that go-to place when it comes to international data spaces and making the global data economy a success? I'm happy to hand over to my dear colleague, Gianfranco Cecconi, and he will make you familiar with a change that we are gonna conduct from 24 to 25.
Thank you, Lars. Yeah, I'm very, very happy to take you through this. I realize we have little time, but I will try to be as clear as possible, also to save some time for the Q&A in the end. The transition we're starting in 2025 will take us closer than ever to be relevant and supportive to our members and our audience, by the way, and fit to deliver our mission. It's been 8 years since you gave us the mandate to develop data space practices and technologies for the industries you represent and for the public. We were pioneers at the time. Probably many of us still feel that way, but a lot has changed as well. The need for the association to change comes from the deep realization that the ecosystem we serve is matured. We are still pioneers in a way, but we've also grown up. We've grown up in our understanding of the topics, in the experience we developed actually delivering data spaces, and in the numbers, whether we are data space organizations involved in them, we are more. Most of us, I believe, have also moved on from considering data spaces an intriguing research topic to rather a place where we believe it is an actual opportunity for business and innovation. If you can move to the next one, please. Perhaps the next slide, please. Perhaps you've noticed, no, the one before. One back, thank you. Perhaps you noticed Lars earlier in this session referring to the concept of users and makers, and you may be wondering what is that? Today, if you look at our ecosystem, it's easy to recognize about 2 groups of organizations among our followers, among you, whether you're members or not. We may call them simply data space users and data space makers. We call data space users those organizations that participate in data spaces with the goal of finding the data they need for their business, efficiency or innovation, and also to offer data they hold for others to reuse as well. The makers, on the other side, participate in data spaces with the goal of providing services and tools to the others. Among them are the data space governing authorities, the data space operators, the service and cloud providers, the advisory services, and so on. Those 2 categories, if we focus on them, we will really meet those objectives of developing data spaces, knowing who is on the other side. If you go to the next slide, please. Let's focus a little on the users. You may feel yourself a user if you have those kind of needs there. You want to understand data spaces and the business opportunities that they enable. Some of them may still be learning in this stage. You may want to discover what data spaces are the best fit to your data needs and your offerings. And you want probably to be able to choose reliable software and services to connect to those data spaces. In the light of those needs, and the next slide will tell you what IDSA wants to be for you. We want to give you opportunities to learn and to stay up to date with those best practices and those technologies. We want to give you a channel for your needs to be heard, understood, and represented. That's what the industry associations are for. And we want to give you those best practices and technologies and standards described by my colleagues earlier that address all of your needs. Are you a user? Let's take a look at the makers instead in the next slide. If you're a maker, you probably want to educate the public to data sharing and data spaces. The topic is still relatively misunderstood out there, and there's still a lot of education to be done. You probably want to promote your activities. You want to engage customers. That's what you do for a living, right? You need them to know you. And of course, because the topic is relatively complex still today, you want to secure government's understanding of the topics and their support. What does IDSA want to be for the makers then? We'll see it in the next slide. We want to give makers exposure to data space users, their insight, their requirements. After all, those services are developed for them. We want to host, like we've done for 8 years, those working groups that specify the practices and technology and standards. We will continue doing that, of course. and that element of representation that perhaps we do, but we don't talk much about, we will also represent you makers with the governments and the international standard institutions, because it's probably unlikely that each of you can go there and spend and invest the time. Again, that's what industry associations are for. If you go to the next slide, please, you may be wondering, so am I a user or am I a maker? You don't need to pick sides. During 2025, everything the association does will be accessible to all members like they were in the past. The biggest difference here is that in the way the IDSA team, we will be more sensitive to the differences and plan and deliver everything we do, and that characterizes the association, our events, our publications, the working group, and so on, by being much more careful that the needs of those two categories are taken good care of. In several cases, we will be very explicit in telling you this is an activity specialized for users, or this is an activity specialized for makers. And then it's up to you to choose where you would like to be, where would you like to invest your time and contribute. If you go to the next slide, please. In the 2025 transition in particular, we will start refreshing a few of our traditional services for users. By popular demand, for example, IDSA will restart hosting the activities we will be calling Integration Camp for you to make yourselves familiar with available technologies, software, and services. Within the context of the Integration Camp, you've already heard from Christoph, by the way, about the test beds that we can offer through our members. Another activities we want to relaunch are the Plug Fest events. It's something IDSA has done already in the past. They are interactive live events where users and makers meet to test the interoperability of their software solutions, typically the connector implementations. In preparation to the imminent standardization of a data space protocol, this will be super useful. We will run these activities in collaboration with our makers members that have the right competencies. It's obvious, right? Scaling up the association activities depends more than ever on giving you space, creating opportunities for you to be with us on stage and contributing according to your profiles of users and makers, hosting events, sharing your knowledge and experience. For the members in the audience that would like to be protagonists of the first activities we will be organizing, please contact us after this call to book yourselves to ensure that we know you're ready and willing to come to the stage. One more change is coming that is interesting. If you go to the next slide, please. We realized that for some of our organizations in our audience, we need to create a new opportunity for them to be close to our activities. Many prospective members cannot join IDSA because of bureaucracy. Administratively, they can't become members because the legal office doesn't like perhaps the terms of the association, or becoming a member requires the authorization of their top leadership. So we can make this much simpler. From 2025, the association's activities dedicated to users will be accessible even without becoming members, with a simple annual subscription that you can buy like you would buy training or a subscription to a professional magazine. If you go to the next slide, if you are a member already, by the way, you don't need to do anything. So don't worry there. Your membership status in 2025 is not changing. This is an opportunity for the new friends of IDSA. And then to close on my little speech, if you go to the next slide, next to this, thanks to this change, next slide, please. We plan to grow significantly the base, no, one back. Upstairs delay. Thanks to this change, we plan to grow significantly the base of users contributing to the association. The larger the base of users, the more relevant the requirements we will be collecting and the more helpful the solutions we will be supporting in development. Besides, the larger the base of users, the more interesting IDSA becomes for makers too. So back to Lars, can you zoom out a little from what I described and share how you see the overall experience of being a data space user in IDSA?
Yeah, I absolutely do see that, and I really want to make everyone able or to, well, share that experience. And so don't want to go into detail here. So we focus on, well, how can you experience data spaces? And we bring together the makers and the users. So the makers bring technology insights, testbed labs, and the users, they want to understand. So we have a lot of activities that we are offering for data space users. So knowledge transfer training, matchmaking, making Q&A, and so on. And also, especially these activities where you can like really test, make your hands dirty, and find the right setup for your needs. So the green part. So this is a very important focus for the next phase. And the dark gray one. So what we also need to have is your requirements. So, and we already have a, well, continuous requirements management process, but that needs to be like much more visible to the user. So you do not have like to attend the working group meetings, but we offer a very clear channel into all the standard defining work for the users where you can drop your requirements, and that is needed, especially on the global context. What are the needs for the 100 data spaces in China? We want to understand that. What implication does that have on our standards? In Japan, so there's so much happening. We want to understand what we need to integrate, and then other economic areas, and well, what is happening in India, right? So that is what we want to do here. So warm invite to become part of that. Next slide, please. I would like to come to an end of this annual update session, unfortunately. So and have a little bit of look of where we are. So so that slide is with us since 8 years or so. So the evolution of data spaces. So it starts with one-to-one data sharing, but we want to end up in open dynamic ecosystems, M2N data sharing between unknown partners, open ecosystems, right? So next slide. Where are we? So we are still on the way from phase 2 to phase 3. So some final things needs to be fixed so that we reach the ultimate goal, that we have a common design, common standard, so that all data spaces in the world are interoperable, following to what I mentioned before on the data space protocol. So we have so we need the common design. So we are super close to that with the ISO 20151, we also need to see that technology fits the standard. So individual organizations, ecosystems take different design choices, technology choices. We continuously need to see that we are in a brownfield approach and that the components are interoperable and stay interoperable and compatible. Therefore, we need to work closely with the makers and users together. Interoperability is key, and here let's see. So interoperability has different flavors. So we need to differentiate that. And at the end, we need services and software off the shelf. We need a diversity of solutions. So what Giulia presented with the data connector report, so that you are not dependent on one vendor, but that you have industry-grade, reliable, powerful components, service offerings in place. So that is the goal, and we are close, but 25 will be, next slide, will be the phase where we can really make the the change happen to really flourishing ecosystem. So in 23, everything was a little bit unclear, uncertain. 24, we already paved the road for global standardization and convergence of technology and frameworks. And 25 is really making things happen. And therefore, we call that like the springboard phase. So have a comparison with a startup. So we have proven that the idea is good and works in the last 8 years, but now it becomes a reality. And this comes with completely different needs. So it's no longer trial and error. It's like a real business reality. And that is the situation that we are all in. And for IDSA, that means a new posture towards that reality, a new confidence in the ecosystem, so that we can provide our services, that we can be that neutral place for coming up with the global standards for data spaces. And therefore, we call that season 2. So like with a blockbuster, so season 1 was a success. So I like the story, but now, so maybe we need a new actor in there. We need a new camera perspective. That is season 2. So, and that is how we see the IDSA for 25. Next slide. And this is, so we have explained everything already before. We can see the full picture. And you see here just depicted our holistic approach to bring data spaces to global scale with IDSA in its nature, working closely with makers and users together on the global standards so that we have true impact. And you see all the measures, most of them have been described. This is the full picture that we are conducting in IDSA. Next slide. And that will lead us into the future. So we can only win this game of the future of data economy together. So we are talking about data economy, we are talking about AI. Where does the data come from? So without trust and self-determined or data sovereign data sharing, this will not happen. So data spaces are more relevant than ever, especially as AI do not find enough data in the open internet. So we have to go into the basements of companies, of organizations, of governments, of us individuals, and we do not share data if we do not trust in the ecosystem, in the technology, in the framework. And that is exactly what we are doing with the standards. So if you like that, so IDSA has no natural home. We are on our own as international organization. We are not tied to a government or to a domain. So therefore, we are a group of friends that have a joint vision and probably have fun and at the end success. So please engage in our working groups, co-create the assets. If you have not joined IDSA so far, please consider to do that quickly, because there's a lot to do and there's no option for the future to not doing data spaces, because then whole data economy will not work. Please also convince suitable organizations from your ecosystem to join IDSA, either as a maker or a user. Promote IDSA in your ecosystem, in your country, because we still need to go for that full global reach. And in general, people need to know about data spaces, because this can be really an important tool for the future. It's essential for that data-driven future. So that is our goal, our mission, my vision. I like that ecosystem a lot. I personally think we are really building the future here. It's great to be together with all these partners, with the members, and work on that bright future. It's great to have you. And who can afford some more minutes? So we were quick, but not quick enough for the Q&A. So I will stay here. Some colleagues will stay here. So therefore, let's open the floor a bit for questions. You can also continue putting items in the chat. We will answer them now, later. And the best thing is, join IDSA. Then you are part of that great new blockbuster in 25. So let's see. So we need icebreakers. So some people are leaving, and some have already been with us in the General Assembly. So already a lot of time. Please open your camera. One great question, a remark, new data spaces. So, however, I know that it's always complicated at the end of such a long presentation to ask individual questions. You know where we are. We are in the internet. There's a website. Yes. So, Alexandre, I think.
From Denmark. Hello.
Hello.
One question. What is the status of compatibility between different certified data space connectors? So you have named a few. Let's assume we have one data space running primarily with one type of connector, another one with another type of connector. We want to interconnect those two. What is the status at the end of 2024?
Well, a very good question, and the remark with 24 is important. Let's see how that looks like in 25. So currently we see that there's a certain interoperability, but probably at the end no interoperability, because there are some technical details that prevent one connector being fully interoperable with the other. So some are better interoperable than others. That is exactly what we go for with the TCK, the Technical Compatibility Kit, based on the Data Space Protocol. And that is the reason of existence for the Data Space Protocol, because that is the basic interoperability mechanism for the connectors. So therefore, we will in 25 base the IDSA certification scheme on the Data Space Protocol and the TCK, and also analyze the connectors in the data connector report according to that, and then show who is compatible with who. As long as two connectors are not interoperable or compatible, let's say interoperable, then we open up these testbed activities, this integration camp. So I like better the term integration camp, because we also respect that we are in a brownfield, and we all need to respect. So in 23, 24, a lot of things happened. So projects in Germany started, in France started, Spain started, in Japan. So we cannot assume that the technology, so the products, are really interoperable. Our goal as non-profit organization and moderator is to see that we find that smallest common denominator. We think the data space protocol is the right way forward. And that is what we will be conducting in 25. Christoph has shown all the different test beds. So we already are in contact with probably 15 different variants of connectors in different implementation scenarios. And that is where we can like moderate and also discuss with the organizations behind, like, okay, you have some features that do not work together with features from others. So what do you think could be the way forward? So that is our plan and what we will be doing in 25. And we also need your feedback and your requirements. So what do you think is more important and not? So that is exactly what we want to have with bringing makers and users together.
Thank you.
João.
Hello. I have a question about how to be a maker and how to be prepared for the competence center, the space competence center. I saw in your presentation about that, and I'd like to be in touch and have additional information where we can get this kind of information.
Yeah, so we will send you probably immediately an email. So I think my dear colleague Carlos Gonzalez will take care of that request. And then we will provide you with the details, what exactly is well, like the rights and duties, so to say, to be a competence center. And then we can discuss and then we start the onboarding, hopefully bring you there and see you there and have support. Thank you.
Right.
Sounds great. So thank you for these great icebreakers. So dear colleagues, I didn't read, especially when I was talking, all the chat. So I think a lot of relevant questions have been asked there. I feel like most of the questions have also been answered, and also there are follow-ups. I also want to, use the opportunity to say a big thank you to all my dear colleagues who did that tremendous work. We could not really speak about events, and I spot that here. So the next place to meet is the Data Spaces Symposium in Warsaw, beginning of March. So this is the big event on a global scale. And thank you, Andrea. So the Data Sharing Festival, beginning of February, with our dear colleagues from TNO, will happen in The Hague in the Netherlands. So this is more focused on the specialities in the Netherlands, and next to it, the Data Sharing Festival. So for those traveling from all over the world, please join us in Warsaw for the Data Spaces Symposium. That will be a great moment. And you can always join IDSA events online. And also here, that remark, with internationalization, we also need to see that we need to respect different time zones, different languages, and different cultures of interaction. So for 25, we will also work on the setup of our working group so that we can really make sure that we get every person, every good insight to increase the quality of our work. So here, so Jonathan from Eona X, great to have you. Good afternoon. Can IDSA help dataspace makers to ensure that the dataspace protocol may be used as a basis for a common European dataspace? Well, that is the goal. So we are already on it. So we are involved in the Dataspaces Support Center, where we have the building blocks. Currently, the building blocks are not of an authoritative nature, but more as an recommendation and first collection of building blocks that are available. In the version 2 of the blueprint and in the future work of the Dataspaces Support Center, it will be more visible that the dataspace protocol is an inevitable central element of datasphases. This will also, so this is also happening, referring to what Sebastian said, in European standardization with Sensenelec, in JTC 25 and other activities. Also, when it comes to bring things to life in Europe, we have the project Simple, so an open source endeavor as a smart middleware platform for the European funded databases. There also the DSP, the Dataspace Protocol, has been chosen as the protocol to speak dataspace, so to say. So we are on the track. We still need, so that takes a lot of massaging and moderation. That is our job. We happily do that. Nevertheless, any help needed, and we know that Eona X, as you are also using the EDC connector variant, so you are of great help, and I would just encourage you to help, continue helping us to make that happen, because
Thank you so much for saying that. I think there's, of course, the top-down approach with the DSSC, and I think the politic in the EU has also been a lot bottom-up. So I think we need to merge a top-down and a bottom-up approach, especially with the deployment calls that are in place now in many sectors. I think if we can manage to push that, that will ensure that these common European data spaces become interoperable in the end. Otherwise, they might deploy themselves differently. So I really thank you for that, and we can all work together to make that happen.
Yeah, great, Jonathan. Thank you very much for that statement. Alexandre or Dennis?
Yes,
I don't know how to pronounce it.
Thank you, Alexandre. That's French background. Glad that you name Simple. Could you say a few more words about the status of that? Is there anything that can be seen? Because it seems like it's happening mostly behind closed doors. Is it possible to see anything of that, and what is the relationship that you have with Simple at the moment?
Yeah, so we have a good and intense relationship. I will hand over in a second to my colleague Gianfranco. Yeah, so my personal remark. It's right. So the perception that it's a little bit behind closed doors. So sometimes, very often, for good reasons. It's complicated, something like this. I think it's moving in the right direction. And there's an event on 30th of January where they will reveal more. But Gianfranco, you are the person closer.
Of course. So for the ones who don't know, I also run the DSSC as the executive director. So we work with them very closely. The Simple is practically simply a collection of software implementation that match the purposes and the kind of context described in the blueprint. So from that point of view, in a way, it should not have any surprises, and it just takes time because it's an ambitious project. They plan to release a minimum viable product by the time of the event of the 30th of January in Brussels that Lars has named already. So for the time being, most of the DSSC commitment is simply to keep the two projects aligned and manage any kind of disagreement or splinter cell that happens. But in the end, you know what the picture is, right? They already have announced since the summer what are the standards they're going to implement, including their commitment to the data space protocol. So no surprises there. We just need to give them time to develop their kind of distribution, the way I call it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much, and important. So, Andreas, please go maybe to the survey. So we will also ask all of you to conduct that survey. So we want to really know what your priorities are, what your needs are. So we've prepared, thanks to my dear colleague Anna, we have provided a survey. Please, scan the QR code. It's like very easy food. So, but super important input for us, and maybe a good channel to drop more on our plate. Yeah. Yeah, a lot of good things are happening. So Simple in Europe. Also, we are making a lot of good progress in Japan with a testbed at the University of Tokyo and NTT Data in China. There are great things, super interesting things happen. We need to give more visibility to that. Thanks to our partner CFIC over there, we have a strong link to that. Brazil is super important, as mentioned. We also will focus on India and the US in 25. So a lot to do. Please tell everyone about IDSA. It's super great. We are doing important things. And next slide. Then, so continue having questions in the chat, open your camera, raise your hand, but time is more than over. Thank you all for being here, having been with us. Thank you for all your contributions. So as makers, as users, at interested parties, at evangelists, data space enthusiasts. Great to have you. Great to be in that inspiring ecosystem. Have a great holiday season, whatever kind of festival you are celebrating, either in the next week or 2 weeks later. So New Year and different Christmases. So this is the great thing about international. It's also about intercultural aspects. So really great to be in contact with so many inspiring people all over the world. I absolutely enjoy what I'm doing. I enjoy the team and the ecosystem. Thank you for being with us all. Let's have a great 25. Let's find some rest, gain some energy by the end of 24. Have a good start in the new year. Looking forward to see you on any occasion in the next days, weeks, and months. Have a great day, or good night, or good morning. So see you soon. Take care and goodbye.